that you're a God who is not distant and remote, but you're a God who is interested in every aspect of our life, working, Lord, that you speak to us through various ways, but primarily through your word. And we ask right now as we come to your word that our hearts and minds will be open to it. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Castaway. Hands up if you've seen the movie Castaway. Here is Castaway. It's not a great movie. If you haven't seen it, don't worry. You're not missing much. It's basically 2 hours of Tom Hanks talking to a volleyball. Now, Tom Hanks, he plays the character Chuck, a FedEx executive whose plane crashes in the middle of the ocean. I think I've said this before about Tom Hanks. Don't ever go anywhere with Tom Hanks because his ship gets hijacked. His Apollo 13 or whatever he was in, plane crash. I think he's been in 2 plane crashes as well, hasn't he? Anyway, he plays a guy named Chuck, FedEx executive. Plane crashes in the middle of the ocean. He survives the crash and he washes up on this deserted island. No people, no help, just him and a bunch of the packages on the FedEx plane wash up onto this deserted island. And in one of the most desperate moments in the movie, fairly close, he's only been on the island for a little while, he's trying to make fire. And he's rubbing the sticks together. He's sweating. His hands are bleeding because the blisters and all of that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, nothing's working, and the stick breaks. It snaps, and the stick goes into his hand, and blood pours out everywhere. And in frustration, he grabs this volleyball, one of the packages that is washed up on the island. He slams his hand on it, and he throws the ball, screaming and yelling. He goes down to the shore and washes his hands, and then he comes back. And when he comes back, he noticed that the volleyball has this handprint on it. He looks at it, and he starts, and he draws 2 little eyes and a mouth, and then Wilson is born. He starts to talk to Wilson. He looks at Wilson as he's continuing to do this fire. Looking over him, he starts asking him questions. Eventually, he does get fire, and Wilson becomes his best mate. He becomes his companion, his confidant, his counselor throughout this time. Chuck talks to Wilson when he's scared, when he's lonely, when he's angry. He pleads with Wilson. He argues with Wilson. He even apologizes to Wilson. He asks Wilson for help, for guidance, for comfort. And of course, Wilson never says a word. Why? Because he's a volleyball. He's a lovable character though, isn't he? I kind of like Wilson, but he's a volleyball. Made by man, given a name, given a face, given a voice, but not real. Actually, when you think of the story behind it, the genius of actually creating a character out of nothing. Didn't have to pay the volleyball. Didn't have to, it's quite incredible. Asking for help from something that can't hear you, that can't speak, that can't act. And when you think of that, it's pretty silly. But again, he's a deserted island. He is pretty lonely, and the mind does some crazy things. But actually what we're going to see in 1 Kings chapter 18 is almost similar to Wilson. We're going to see the people of Israel doing the same thing. They've turned away from an actual living God, a real God, a God who does hear and a God who does answer, a God who does look after and a God who does provide. And they've actually started worshipping Baal and Asherah, these fake gods, these gods that are being created by man, gods that have been crafted by the imagination of people. They've been given a name, they've been given rituals, they've been given devotion, but actually at the heart of it, they're no different to this volleyball named Wilson. And these people, they cry out to these gods, they cry out to him, they plead, they dance, they cut themselves, they beg for fire from something that cannot hear, that's something that cannot speak, something that cannot act. And they've made their very own God, their very own Wilson. Now here's the question I want us to be thinking as we go through this story in chapter 18. Yes, it's easy to look at the Israelites and even their fake gods, their volleyballs, but the question I want to ask, what are our Wilsons? What are our Wilsons? What are the things that we've created, that we've named, that we trust in, hoping that they will give us peace? Hoping they'll give us purpose, identity, and maybe even salvation. What are our Wilsons? What are the idols we've built with our own hands, our own hearts, expecting them to answer? Because we do. We build these idols, we build these Wilsons, these fake gods, and a lot of times we don't even realize we're putting our faith, our trust, our security in these things. So we're going to race through 1 Kings chapter 18 today. Remember the background. Jason's done a great job the last two sermons, excellent, of breaking down what's been happening. Israel, the king of Israel is King Ahab. He married a lady named Jezebel, and they've turned away from the God of the Bible, Yahweh, and were worshipping Baal and Asherah, these fake gods. Elijah comes to King Ahab and calls him on it and says, you got to stop doing this. This path leads to death and destruction. Worshipping this is wrong, it's bad. You're the king of Israel. Now, Israel is a theocracy, okay? Meaning their structure of governance, I suppose, comes from God. They're in a covenant relationship with God. Australia is not a theocracy, is it? We're a democracy. And so, we all get to have a say, and it's a secular society and all that kind of works pretty good. But Israel is a theocracy. God set them up. They're God's chosen people. And so God says, this is how you will live. King Ahab has pushed against that and brought in these false gods, these false prophets. And Elijah says this is wrong. And he says, from now on, it will not rain. He says, there won't be any dew, there won't be any rain for the next 3 years or until I say so. And then again, Jason looked at Elijah then left. He's fed by ravens. He moves on again. He's fed by this widow. He raises a young boy back to life. And this is where we are at 1 Kings 18, 1, verse 2. It says, after a long time, in the 3rd year, so it's been 3 years has passed since that first word to King Ahab. The word of the Lord came to Elijah, and he says, go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. 3 years earlier, God said, go and hide yourself to Elijah. Go and say something and then hide. Elijah's been hiding basically for 3 years. And now God says, go show yourself. 3 years, he said there will be no rain. Now he's going to say there's going to be rain. There's going to be rain. And he goes. Elijah goes to see Ahab. Now, Elijah is enemy number one. Elijah, the people don't like Elijah because there is famine. Now again, we read this and we can kind of just forget. Here's a picture of famine in probably an African country there, and there's no food, there's no water. This is what the people of Israel were facing. And as Elijah heads out to go and see Ahab, he bumps into a guy named Obadiah who worked for the king, and he says he's going to see Ahab, and Obadiah says, oh, Elijah, just so you know, there's some prophets of God who I've hidden, but guess what? Ahab's not happy. And Elijah says, well, obviously he's not happy, but guess what? I'm coming for him. I'm coming to let him know what God's going to do next. And so there's this famine. He's enemy number one. Think of the courage that it takes for Elijah to go to the king now. Ahab's popularity ranking is down. It's down. People are getting annoyed because there's no food, there's no water. There's this frustration. Look at verse 16. We'll fast forward a little bit. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. So King Ahab and Elijah are coming together. Verse 17, it says, when he saw Elijah, this is King Ahab, he said to him, it is you troubler of Israel. Remember, King Ahab is blaming Elijah. We tend to do that, don't we? When we're the ones who make the mistakes, or we're the ones that have sinned, we look for excuses, or we look to see who we can blame. It's not Elijah who has done this, it's King Ahab. Is that you troubler? Actually, the Hebrew wording there, it's almost like he's calling Elijah, you snake. Is that a compliment to call someone a snake? You snake. And it's not, is it? And so he's saying, you snake of Israel, you're the reason. Now Elijah shoots straight back to him and says, no, mate. You're dreaming. I'm not the problem. You are the problem. I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied. He's got this courage, he's got this guts to stand up to King Ahab. King Ahab could have him killed, but he has a confidence that comes from God, doesn't it? He's done the preparation. He's done the preparation when he was being fed by the ravens. The confidence to know that God has got his back, that God is looking after him. When he went to the widow, when he raised the young boy from the dead, there's this confidence. Elijah replied, but you and your father's family, you have abandoned the Lord's commands and you have followed the Baals. And then this is what he says. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So there was 400 prophets. Baal was one god, and then the Asherah was another god, and they had prophets. That's nearly 800. 800 prophets for these false gods, for these volleyballs, basically. And that just shows you how infiltrated this false religion had got into the people of Israel, into the nation of Israel. And here is, and then this is what he says here. So Ahab, where are we? Where am I? Verse 20. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. So you had all these prophets of Baal and Asherah, but then what are the people doing? What do you see this as the people doing? They're kind of sitting on the fence, aren't they? He's saying, if you want to follow Baal, if you want to follow Asherah, then do that. But if you want to follow God, you can't have both. You can't have both. And they were. Some were following the others and others were sitting in the middle, but the people said nothing. And if you say nothing, that means you're not following who? God. It means you're actually following the others. It means you're putting up with the others. It means you're happy with the status quo. Then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, which wasn't true. We know that there were more. But Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces. That would have been a process in and of itself. And put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. Then all the people said, what you say is good. So all the people agree now. They say, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll see which God is a true God. Is it the gods of Baal, or is it the God of the Bible? Yahweh, the God of the people of Israel. Here's an image of Baal. Not an overly attractive looking fella. There he is. He's known as the fertility god. He's known also as the god of the sun. Now, if you were going to cause fire, where would a good place be to start it from? The sun. So Elijah knows what he's doing here. He's like, so your God is the God of the sun, the God of the crops as well. And so if he can't start fire, if he can't consume this ox, then he's not real. He's a volleyball. Your God is a volleyball. You made this God. You crafted this God. He's not real. Let's keep reading. Verse 25, it says this. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning to noon, so 6 a.m. to lunchtime. They're calling on this God, the God of the Baal, and answer us, answer us. They shouted, but there was no response and no one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. So there's a lot of them, isn't there? There's about 800 of these people. Then there's all the other observers. And these 800 prophets are carrying on like pork chops. They're running around. They're screaming. They're yelling. There's this desperation. There's a frenzy. They're crying out. They're pleading with the God of the sun, the God of the crops, the fertility God, to light this thing up, to light it up, to come down with fire. Verse 27, what does it say here? Elijah's a bit of a smart aleck. He says, at noon Elijah began to taunt them. He says, shout louder, he said. Surely he's a god. Perhaps he's in deep thought or busy. In fact, the deep thought meaning he may be meditating. You know what the busy bit there is? Meaning maybe he's gone to the toilet. That's what it's saying. Maybe he's meditating, or maybe your God's going to the toilet. Does God need to go to the toilet? No, so your God is not God. Or maybe he's traveling. I hear Europe is nice this time of the year. Maybe he's sleeping, and maybe he's must be awakened. So they shouted louder and louder, and they slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. There was no one answered, no one paid attention. And so now, obviously, Elijah, again, smart aleck, he's mocking them. They start slashing their wrists or their arms, blood, to appease God. Maybe if we harm ourselves, a lot of faith systems, religions do that today. Asceticism, where they hurt themselves, thinking that would please God, and God will then do something. God will bring me a better crop. God will bring me a better wife or husband, whatever. But you're trying to appease God so you can get something. And so they slash their arms, and blood is flowed. But guess what? I love this last one. There's no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. It's a volleyball. It's a volleyball. And then verse 30, this is the bit I love. Elijah says this. Then Elijah said to all the people, we're moving pretty fast, aren't we? It's not like home and away. We are moving. Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. So it's not just the prophets. He wants everyone to see and hear and know the truth now. Come here to me. They came to him and they repaired the altar. That's a crucial bit here. They repaired the altar of the Lord. There would have been altars everywhere. And if you look through the Old Testament, the scriptures there's lots of altars that have been built. But also these altars for Baal and these Asherah poles, these false gods were everywhere as well. And they destroyed a lot of the altars of God. So he repaired the altar for the Lord, which had been torn down. Verse 31, Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Your name shall be Israel. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. So that's a large amount of water. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 jars of water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Now, you're thinking there's a drought. Where do you get the water? Did anyone think that? Oh, you guys are good. There's an ocean just down the road. So he had to go down the hill, who I would hate to do that job and bring all the water up. But anyway, someone did it. And not only did they do it once, it says, do it again, he said. And they did it again. So 2 times, no, do it a 3rd time, he ordered. And they did it a 3rd time. And it says the water ran down the altar and even filled the trench. There's like this moat of water around this altar. It has the chopped up oxen there and the wood. It is saturated. The first thing Elijah did was rebuild the altar, and then he puts lots and lots of water. Why is he putting the water on the altar, on the sacrifice? He wants everyone to know that this isn't chance. This isn't some magic trick. This isn't him with the old, lighter from smoking the cigarettes. You don't see the lighters anymore. Has anyone got a lighter? Anyone got a lighter on them? No. See, when I went to school, everyone had a lighter. But this isn't a trick. It's saturated. The only way this is going to be on fire is because God will send fire and God will light it. Look at verse 36. Here it is. It says, I didn't let you read that. Verse 36. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Now, this is in contrast to the other prophets that spent hours running around, foaming from the mouth, chanting this kind of cultic ritual, slashing their arms. None of that stuff. None of that repetitious, just a clear prayer of faith. And we see a completely different response. Now, you know the story. Verse 38 says, "And the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench." Was gone. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate, meaning they fell on their hands and knees, put their head to the ground. They cried, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." The fire consumed it all. Imagine being there when this happened. Imagine being one of the other prophets. Oh no, my arms are sore. Or even being the other observers. Wow, and you see their response is to get down to the ground and to worship. Now this is the key point, really. This is what Elijah wanted. He wanted to turn the hearts back, the people of Israel, to turn their hearts back to who? To God. It wasn't just about winning the fight or the battle. It wasn't Ahab versus Elijah. Yes, you could see it like that. But actually it was to determine who is the real God. This is the main point of the story. Yes, it demonstrates God's power, but it is to show that God is the one and only God. That all other so-called gods are just volleyballs. Are just like Wilson. They're man-made. They're not real. No matter how hard we try or how we try to conjure up emotions and all that, does not matter. They are not real. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. There's no other God. Apart from me, there is no other God. And then the last verse, and this is quite brutal, isn't it? Do we know what happens at the end? You'd know the story. Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there. That didn't happen in Castaway. It's strong, and we'll touch on that in a second. So there is the story. Incredible story. In fact, if you go to Mount Carmel today, there is actually a statue of David up there. There's a statue and telling the story of this Elijah, a statue of Elijah. You can see that today. And so let's quickly look at this. The first thing I want to say is this. Faith that soaks the sacrifice. This is what we see in Elijah firstly. He has a faith that soaks the sacrifice. Elijah's faith was real. Elijah didn't have to soak the sacrifice, but his faith is that strong. He says, you know what? Pour water on it, and pour more water on it, because I know God is going to answer this prayer. I know God is going to answer this prayer. Elijah's faith was real. And he says it there, "Let there be no doubt, if fire falls, it's from God alone, not from him." And again, just a reminder of the preparation that Elijah had. The preparation in Cherith and Zarephath, where God was preparing him. He had to rely on the ravens, the widow, raising that young boy from death. He is being prepared. His courage, his faith is growing. You would have seen, I've talked about this before, we've done a sermon on it, where we see God give someone a vision. And that could be a general vision to start with, just to live a Christian life, or it could be a specific vision, which we see here in the story of Elijah. And the vision requires faith, okay? The vision requires faith. How do we know that there is faith? The faith is demonstrated by what? Action. So we see this in Elijah. God says go and say that the rain's going to come back, okay? That requires faith. It requires faith. He's got the two altars. How do we know there was faith? Well, there was action. He poured water on it. He put the oxen there. That was definite action. And then the last outworking is victory. Now, the victory is not for the person. The victory is that God is glorified. We see it here. God is glorified. If you know the rest of the story, actually, Elijah falls into a pit of depression. So there's not much, it's not the victory, yes, I'm the man. The victory is God is glorified. And so we see this in our day-to-day life. God gives us a vision, a calling. We have to act by faith. What does that faith look like? There is action. Victory is God is glorified, and we see it here. And some of us might be thinking, but Elijah is almost supernatural. If you look in James, actually, James says, you know what? Elijah was just a normal guy. A normal guy with a lot of faith. A normal guy with a lot of faith. So Elijah has faith that soaks the sacrifice. Elijah's faith was real. So what? What does that mean for us, though? This is what it means. First thing I think it means is we need to tear down your Wilsons. What are they? Our man-made gods cannot save. What are those things in our life? Just like in Castaway, Baal was a man-made god, an object to bring comfort and hope, or whatever, that we could go to, that we can cry out to, that we can blame even. The prophets danced around, shouted, cut themselves, cried out, but it wasn't real. But we have them as well. What are our Wilsons? Maybe it's our career, maybe it's even our relationships. We put all our faith and trust in that. Maybe it's our success, maybe it's having control. I've got to have control. And from these things we get comfort, maybe temporary, but they can't save us. So what we need to tear down the Wilsons, just like he did, got rid of those altars. What are the I'm struggling with that, aren't I? Man-made gods. What are our man-made gods? Where do we put our faith? What are we putting our faith in? They can't save us. I love that phrase there. How long will you hesitate between two opinions? Kind of just sitting on the fence. So we all have different gods. We all do it. We all put our faith in things of the world. And so here we're reminded and encouraged, get rid of them, tear them down, get that volleyball and boot it. Have a think about it. The other thing I want to quickly say before we move to the next one is any other faith system other than Jesus, now this may grind against you a little bit. Any other faith system other than Jesus is not real, is not God. It's a man-made God. So all the other faith systems, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, they're not of God. They're not of God. In fact, the Bible talks about two spirits, the spirit of God and the spirit of the enemy. And so any other faith system, they can't. They're opposed to Jesus. The world will tell us all religions are the same, all paths lead to... That's not true. Now, hear me clearly, that doesn't mean we don't disrespect or hate. No. We're commanded to love others. We're commanded to love our enemies. But the bottom line is, the truth is, if it's not Jesus, it's not God. It's not real. It's wrong. It's bad. And those people who are stuck in those systems, that road, that path leads to death and destruction. And so that's the first thing. No man-made God can save us. Second thing here, really quickly, we need to rebuild the altar, return to true worship. Elijah, yes, he prayed, but what he did was he rebuilt these altars, these kind of pile of stones. They would put the sacrifice on the altar. He repaired it. And we look, Noah was the first person to build an altar. Every time there was something significant, we see in the Old Testament, they would build altars. They were places of prayer, places of assembly. They were places of thankfulness. But mainly, they were places. What was the main thing that happened on the altar? Sacrifice. Why was there a sacrifice offered? To restore relationship with God. So what we see here again in the story of Mount Carmel here is he's restoring the relationship between God. It's representing a right relationship with God. How is your relationship with God going? Do you have a right relationship with God right now? Now, we don't need animal sacrifices anymore. Why? Because of the blood of Jesus. Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. And he actually calls us, as his followers, to be sacrifices. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. So how do we rebuild the altar? We return to prayer. We return to Scripture. We return to being obedient and living a Spirit-filled life. We don't mix God with other stuff, other faith systems. No, it needs to be pure. It needs to be of God. God responds to faith, not performance. And the last one here is we need to remove the disease. Commit fully to Jesus. After the fire fell, Elijah didn't stop there, did he? We read that quite confronting last verse in verse 40 where he slaughters the prophets of Baal. And we think, oh gosh, that's just... But again, think of what's happening in his time, in that moment. Those people, those individuals, had turned a whole nation away from God in this theocracy, God's chosen people. And he says we need to remove it, because if there's a little bit there, what happens? So if you have a disease that's, a horrible disease, cancer, the doctor doesn't say, I'm just going to remove a few cells. I'll just take a little bit of the tumor out. They don't do that, do they? Generally, they say, we got to get what? We got to get all of it out. And in fact, not only are we going to get all of it out, we're going to get some of the good tissue out just to be what? Just to be sure. Because they know if there's a bit in there, that's what Elijah is doing here. Now, we don't live in that system, no. We live in the new covenant. And so that battle is actually now sin. Look at Colossians 3 here. We need to put to death. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear in him in glory. Put to death, meaning to kill, meaning to destroy. Therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual morality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, which is idolatry, because of these the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in his ways in the life you once lived. But now you must rid yourself of all such things: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips, and so on. Paul is saying you've got to take this serious, be radical with this stuff, get rid of it. It's like Jesus. When Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, pull it out. If your arm causes you to sin, chop it off. Now, he's not talking literally here, in the sense, so no one rock up next week. Hey, Anthony, I listened to your sermon. But what he's saying is, you're better off, if that sin is going to stop you from getting to heaven, you're better off losing your arm. You're better off losing your eye. Don't muck around with it, he's saying. Put it to death. It's serious. It's like when you watch a horror movie or a movie where there's a bad guy and they're running away from the bad guy or the horror movie person, and they get it, and they finally beat the bad guy or the horror movie. And they're lying on the ground and they're like, yes, we beat him. And you know he's not quite dead. And you're like, just kill him. Or they leave the gun just lying there. And they're like, yes, we're safe. And then all of a sudden, boom, he gets up and you got to kill the bad guy because he always comes back. Put to death, that's what Jesus is saying. So there we have, remove the disease. Here we go, 3 things. Tear down your Wilsons, rebuild the altar, remove the disease. We've got to keep moving. I'm going to ask the ushers to come on up as we lead into communion and come forward. And I just want you to meditate on these 3 areas as we take communion. Because Jesus pays the price. He restores, he goes to the cross, he restores, makes our relationship right with God. Are there any Wilsons in your life? Do you need to rebuild the altars? Do you need to remove some sin or some disease? I want you to think about it, pray about it, and if there is, just hand them over to God. come up and take the communion, the blood, the body of Jesus represented in the grape juice and the bread. Eat the bread and we'll drink the blood. Drink the blood, drink the grape juice together. So in your own time. Thank you.